I'm Vanessa Mitchell, 32, and 3 months ago, I was living every bride's dream planning my perfect June wedding to Ryan. That dream shattered when my mother called with an impossible demand: postpone my wedding because my sister Bethany was suddenly engaged and wanted my date. Your sister has always been more sensitive than you, Mom insisted. Can't you just be the bigger person? Little did she know, being the bigger person this time would mean something entirely different. If you're watching this, drop a comment saying where you're from and subscribe to hear how I flipped the script. The day I met Ryan Cooper still feels like yesterday, though it's been 4 years since that chilly October morning at the Riverdale charity run for children's cancer research. I was volunteering at the water station, handing out cups to exhausted runners, when a tall man with kind brown eyes and a crooked smile stumbled toward me. Unlike the other participants who grabbed water without breaking stride, he stopped completely, breathing hard. "Thank you for being out here," he said, his voice warm despite his exhaustion. "My little cousin survived because of research like this." That simple moment of genuine gratitude when most people barely made eye contact struck me. Ryan finished his water, asked my name, and promised to find me after the race. I didn't expect him to remember, but 2 hours later, there he was, showered and changed, asking if I'd join him for coffee. Our relationship blossomed naturally. Ryan was everything my family wasn't: attentive, validating, and genuinely interested in my thoughts and feelings. By our second anniversary, we were living together in a cozy apartment downtown, and last Christmas Eve, he proposed during a private dinner at the Summit, the restaurant where we'd had our first official date. He'd arranged for the chef to hide the ring in a custom dessert, and when I found it, I looked up to see Ryan already on one knee. "Vanessa Mitchell, you've made these past 3 years the happiest of my life. Would you make me the luckiest man alive by becoming my wife?" The joy I felt saying yes was indescribable. We spent that night calling friends and family, though my parents' response should have been my first warning. While my father offered a distracted congratulations, my mother's first question was, "What does Bethany think about this?" Bethany, my younger sister by 3 years, has always been the center of my parents' universe. Since childhood, our roles were clearly defined. She was the golden child. I was the responsible one expected to accommodate her needs and feelings. When we were kids, this meant Bethany got the new bike while I kept my old one because she'd be too disappointed otherwise. In high school, it meant my parents attended all of Bethany's average dance performances, but missed my debate team state championship because Bethany needed support more. My father, Gregory, occasionally showed signs of recognizing the imbalance. Once, after missing my college graduation because Bethany had a minor cold, he secretly sent me a generous gift card with a note saying, "Proud of you, kiddo." But these moments were rare, and he never stood up to my mother, Diana, who orchestrated the family dynamic with calculated precision. Ryan's family was refreshingly different. His mother, Susan, welcomed me with genuine warmth, and his father, Thomas, treated me with the same respect and interest he showed his own children. His younger brother, Michael, became like the brother I never had, and for the first time, I experienced what family support should feel like. When we began wedding planning, I was unprepared for how my family dynamics would infiltrate what should have been a joyous process. We found our dream venue at Willow Creek Gardens, a restored Victorian mansion with sprawling gardens and a glass-enclosed reception area that would be perfect for our June wedding. When I excitedly shared photos with my mother, her response was predictable. "It looks overpriced," she said dismissively. "Your cousin Martha got married at the Lakeview Hotel for half the price, and it was perfectly nice." Every decision became a battleground. When I chose a soft palette of sage green and blush pink, my mother suggested Bethany would know better about these things, and insisted I bring her dress shopping despite my sister's history of backhanded compliments about my appearance. When Ryan's parents generously offered to pay for the catering, my mother found ways to diminish their contribution, suggesting their chosen vendor was trying too hard to be fancy. Thankfully, my best friend Mackenzie provided the support my family couldn't. We'd been inseparable since freshman year of college, and she understood the family dynamic better than anyone. "Your mom has some serious issues, Van," she said during one post-planning session wine night. "Ryan's family is bending over backward to be helpful, and your mom acts like they're trying to hijack her event." The first serious warning sign came at our engagement dinner. I'd reserved a private room at an upscale restaurant, invited both families and our closest friends. Bethany arrived with Cameron, her boyfriend of only 8 months, a relationship I'd heard surprisingly little about. Throughout dinner, Bethany kept showcasing her left hand conspicuously, though no ring adorned her finger. I absolutely love. "Oval diamonds," she announced to the table while looking pointedly at my round solitaire. "They're much more elegant and sophisticated." Cameron looked uncomfortable, but my mother beamed. "Bethany's always had exquisite taste," she agreed, before turning to Cameron. "Don't you think so?" The hidden message wasn't subtle. Bethany was ready for a ring, and it should outshine mine. Ryan noticed too, squeezing my hand under the table as my stomach tightened with familiar anxiety. The months following our engagement should have been filled with joy and anticipation. Instead, they became an obstacle course of small disappointments and confrontations as my family systematically undermined my wedding plans. The invitation list became the first battleground. Ryan and I had chosen an intimate venue with a maximum capacity of 150 guests, focusing on quality time with people who truly supported our relationship. When I shared our preliminary list with my mother, she immediately produced her own additional list of 43 people, distant relatives I barely knew, her bridge club friends, and several of my father's business associates. "Family is family," she insisted when I explained the venue limitations. "Your second cousin Irene would be heartbroken to be excluded, and the Thompsons have known you since you were a baby." I barely remembered the Thompsons, but arguing was futile. I reluctantly agreed to add 15 names, cutting into the space for Ryan's extended family and our mutual friends. The bridesmaid dress debacle came next. I'd selected elegant sage green gowns that complemented our venue's garden setting. Bethany, who I'd reluctantly asked to be a bridesmaid more out of obligation than desire, declared the color "makes me look jaundiced" and campaigned for bright coral instead, a color that would clash horribly with everything else. "Just let her have this one thing," my father suggested when I called to vent my frustration. "You know how she gets when she feels overlooked." The pattern continued with my family forgetting important planning meetings. They were 45 minutes late to our menu tasting, causing the chef to rush through options. My mother missed our appointment with the florist entirely, then criticized my selections because I wasn't included in the decision. When the venue coordinator scheduled our final walkthrough, my parents canceled the morning of, claiming they double-booked with Bethany's dental appointment. Meanwhile, Bethany's comments about marriage grew increasingly pointed. At every family gathering, she managed to mention Cameron's promising career and how they'd been discussing their future. My mother enthusiastically encouraged these conversations, often steering discussions away from my wedding to focus on Bethany's hypothetical one. The situation reached a breaking point during a family dinner 5 months before the wedding. We'd gathered at my parents' house for my father's birthday, and I'd hoped to finalize a few key details with my mother afterward. Instead, Bethany monopolized the entire evening with stories about her recent vacation with Cameron to Napa Valley. The vineyard owner said we were the most perfect couple he'd seen all season, she gushed, as my mother hung on every word. He even gave us a private tour of the estate and mentioned what a beautiful wedding venue it would make. My mother practically vibrated with excitement. "Did he give you his card? You should keep connections like that." Throughout dinner, I attempted to participate in the conversation, but my mother subtly steered attention back to Bethany at every turn. When I mentioned our recent meeting with the photographer, my mother nodded absently before turning to Bethany. "Sweetheart, tell everyone about that sunset cruise you and Cameron took." Ryan witnessed the dynamic in full force for the first time that night. Though he'd seen snippets before, the blatant favoritism was unavoidable, particularly when my father remained uncomfortably silent throughout the evening, offering no support despite my increasingly strained expression. On the drive home, Ryan finally spoke what we'd both been thinking. "Your sister seems weirdly competitive with you, and your mom's feeding into it. Has it always been this bad?" I felt the familiar knot in my stomach, part embarrassment, part resignation. "More or less. I usually try to keep you away from the worst of it." The conversation with Mackenzie the next day was even more direct. We met for lunch at our favorite cafe, and I barely finished describing the dinner before she put down her fork with purpose. "Van, this isn't normal. Your family is treating your wedding like an inconvenience, and your sister acts like you've stolen her spotlight by getting engaged first. You need to set some boundaries before they ruin this entire experience for you." She was right, but years of conditioning made the thought of confrontation terrifying. Each time I considered standing firm, my mother's favorite phrase echoed in my mind. "If you were more accommodating like your sister, everything would be easier." The irony, of course, was that Bethany had never accommodated anyone in her life. She demanded and received, while I compromised and settled. But attempting to explain this dynamic to others made me sound jealous and petty, so I'd learned to minimize it, even to Ryan. As the wedding date approached, my excitement increasingly mingled with anxiety. Ryan's family noticed the change in my demeanor. His mother Susan pulled me aside after a Sunday dinner at their home. "Vanessa, dear, I hope you know that this wedding is about you and Ryan, not appeasing everyone else. Your happiness matters." Her words brought unexpected tears. To my eyes, the simple validation that my feelings mattered was so foreign coming from a mother figure that I didn't know how to respond. Ryan's family had become my sanctuary, the place where I felt valued without conditions or comparisons. If only I'd known how desperately I would need that sanctuary in the coming weeks. The bombshell dropped at Easter dinner. Ryan and I had joined my family at their home, bringing a homemade strawberry cheesecake and a bottle of my father's favorite whiskey. As we gathered around my mother's formally set dining table, Bethany arrived 40 minutes late, practically dragging a nervous-looking Cameron behind her. "Sorry we're late, everyone," she announced breathlessly, though her perfect makeup suggested no actual rushing had occurred. "We have the most exciting news and wanted to make a proper entrance." My stomach instantly clenched. I knew what was coming before she thrust her left hand forward, showcasing an enormous oval diamond that caught the light from every angle. "We're engaged!" Bethany squealed as my mother leapt from her chair with a cry of delight I'd never heard when Ryan proposed to me. She embraced Bethany, then Cameron, actual tears streaming down her face. "My baby girl is getting married!" she sobbed, while my father awkwardly patted Cameron's shoulder with a murmured, "Welcome to the family." Ryan squeezed my hand under the table, his expression neutral, but his eyes communicating volumes. The contrast between this reaction and the distracted, "That's nice, dear," that had greeted our engagement was impossible to ignore. As the meal progressed, Bethany detailed Cameron's elaborate proposal, which had apparently involved renting out a restaurant's rooftop and hiring a string quartet. My mother hung on every word, repeatedly exclaiming that she'd never heard of such a romantic proposal, despite sitting across from me and the man who'd proposed just months earlier. When Ryan politely mentioned we needed to finalize our wedding details soon, my mother waved dismissively. "You two have everything under control. Bethany will need all my attention now. First-time wedding planning is so overwhelming." The subtext was clear. My wedding had become the practice run, the opening act to Bethany's main event. Throughout dinner, Bethany made several comments about June being the perfect wedding month, and how she'd always dreamed of being a June bride, despite never having mentioned this preference before. The manipulation escalated in the following weeks. My mother began calling daily with subtle suggestions about my wedding decisions that always favored Bethany's newly articulated preferences. "Are you absolutely set on the Willow Creek Gardens?" Bethany mentioned it would be perfect for the vision she's always had. You're more practical. Wouldn't you prefer somewhere more sensible? When I reminded her we'd signed contracts and paid non-refundable deposits months ago, she sighed heavily. Well, I suppose that can't be helped, but perhaps you could at least consider a different color scheme? Bethany has her heart set on blush pink for her bridesmaids, and it would be awkward to have such similar weddings so close together. The irony that Bethany had chosen her colors only after seeing mine wasn't lost on me, but I'd spent my life avoiding conflict with my family, and breaking that pattern felt impossible, even as resentment built. The vendor suggestions came next. The florist you chose mentioned she'd be perfect for Bethany's more elaborate vision. Would you mind using someone else? There's a lovely woman at my church who could handle something simple like yours. Each comparison subtly positioned Bethany's hypothetical wedding as more important, more sophisticated, more deserving of the best resources, despite the fact that she hadn't even set a date yet. The acceleration point came during a bridal salon appointment I'd scheduled to select my veil. Despite not inviting her, Bethany showed up to support me, though she spent most of the appointment trying on elaborate tiaras and veils, far more ornate than anything I'd consider. As I stood on the platform in my simple, elegant A-line dress, with a fingertip veil, Bethany circled me with a calculating expression. I think I might want Willow Creek too, she said casually. The gardens would be perfect for the vision I've always had. What date did you book again? Early June, right? The consultant caught my expression and tactfully suggested we take a break for refreshments. In the private lounge, I called Ryan, my hands shaking. She's going to try to take our venue, I whispered. I can feel it coming. That evening, my mother called. Her voice carried the faux casual tone that always preceded a demand. Vanessa, I've been thinking, since you and Bethany will both be planning weddings, wouldn't it make sense to share some of the resources? Maybe you could introduce her to your venue coordinator and other vendors. She's feeling overwhelmed and could use the head start. I gripped the phone tighter. Mom, my wedding is in 8 weeks. I can't split my vendor's attention right now. Her voice chilled immediately. You've always been so selfish when it comes to your sister. She's looking at the same venue, you know. They told her there's another June date the following weekend. Wouldn't it be lovely to have sister weddings just a week apart? The suggestion sent panic through me. Having Bethany's wedding immediately after mine would effectively erase any specialness from my day. It would become the rehearsal for her main event. When I expressed this concern to my father during a rare private lunch, he attempted his version of mediation. Your mother means well, he said weakly. Bethany has always been more emotionally fragile than you. She looks up to you, wants what you have. Can't you see it as a compliment? It wasn't a compliment. It was emotional theft. But articulating this to my conflict-avoidant father was pointless. By the time I got home, I was fighting tears of frustration. Ryan found me crying in our bedroom, wedding magazines scattered around me. I don't even want to do this anymore, I admitted. Every decision is a battle. Every choice gets compared to what Bethany would prefer. I'm losing the joy in all of it. Ryan's jaw tightened in a way I'd rarely seen. This is our wedding, Vanessa. Not your mom's, not your sister's. Maybe it's time to stop including them in every detail if they can't be supportive. He was right, but distancing myself from my family felt impossible after a lifetime of seeking their approval. That night, I had the first of many wedding nightmares, standing at the altar alone while my family sat in the front row watching Bethany walk down the aisle in my dress. The next day, my worst fears were confirmed when the venue coordinator called. Ms. Mitchell, I wanted to give you a courtesy heads up. Your sister toured the venue yesterday and has expressed interest in the weekend after your date. I understood from her that this was a coordinated family plan, but wanted to confirm with you directly. My blood ran cold. It's absolutely not a coordinated plan. Please don't share any of my wedding details with her. The coordinator's sympathetic tone told me she understood exactly what was happening. Don't worry. Your contract includes privacy provisions. But you should know she's scheduled a second tour with your exact vendor team next week. When I confronted my mother by phone, she acted confused by my distress. I don't understand why you're so upset. Bethany admires your taste. It's sweet that she wants to follow in your footsteps. But there was nothing sweet about the systematic attempt to duplicate and then outshine every aspect of my wedding. As the final dress fitting, menu tasting, and floral arrangements came together, I felt the joy being steadily drained from what should have been the happiest planning time of my life. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. The knock came on a Sunday afternoon, 6 weeks before our wedding date. Ryan had gone golfing with his father and brother, their monthly tradition. I was alone in our apartment, finalizing reception seating arrangements when my mother and Bethany appeared unannounced at my door. "We need to talk," my mother said, pushing past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. Her tone held the authoritative finality I'd heard throughout childhood before an unwelcome declaration. Bethany followed, settling primly on our sofa with a strange smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a loose-fitting blouse I hadn't seen before, her engagement ring positioned prominently on her lap. "Darling," my mother began, using the endearment she typically reserved for Bethany. "We have a situation that requires your understanding and cooperation. As the older sister, I know you'll want to do what's best for the family." My pulse quickened as I remained standing, suddenly unwilling to be physically lower than them on my own furniture. "What situation?" "Bethany and Cameron have decided they need to move their wedding timeline forward," my mother announced, glancing significantly at my sister. "They have special circumstances that make waiting inappropriate." Bethany placed a protective hand over her stomach, the gesture unmistakable. "We're expecting," she said with practiced modesty. "It's very early, but we want to be married before I start showing. Family values are so important to Cameron's parents." The calculated nature of the announcement wasn't lost on me. My sister had never expressed interest in children, had complained about her friends' babies, and had once declared motherhood a career killer. Yet here she sat, using an unplanned pregnancy as leverage. "Congratulations," I said automatically. "I'm sure you can find a beautiful venue for a quick ceremony. Many places have cancellations if you're flexible." My mother's expression hardened. "We've already discussed this as a family, Vanessa. The only appropriate solution is for you to postpone your wedding. Bethany needs the June date at Willow Creek for obvious reasons." She gestured vaguely toward Bethany's still flat stomach. "You and Ryan aren't in any rush. You can easily wait until fall or even next spring." The audacity momentarily robbed me of speech. They'd discussed this as a family, without me, the primary person affected. They'd decided my wedding was expendable, my deposits forfeit, my plans irrelevant. That's not happening. I finally managed. "We've paid thousands in non-refundable deposits. Our invitations are already mailed. Guests have booked flights." My mother dismissed these concerns with a wave. "People will understand once they know the circumstances. Your father and I will cover the financial losses within reason." Within reason meant whatever they decided was fair, which I knew from experience would be far less than the actual cost. But the money wasn't even the point. "This is my wedding," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Ryan and I have been planning for months. We're not changing our date." Bethany's practiced composure slipped, revealing the smirk I'd seen countless times throughout childhood whenever she'd successfully manipulated our parents. "You've always been the practical one, Vanessa. I need this more than you. A June wedding has been my dream since we were little girls playing dress-up." A lie. Bethany had declared weddings patriarchal nonsense throughout high school and college, changing her tune only when I became engaged. My mother leaned forward, her voice dropping to the guilt-inducing tone that had controlled me for decades. "Your sister is in a delicate condition. The stress of planning a rushed wedding could affect the baby. Is that what you want? To risk your niece or nephew because you're being stubborn about a date?" The manipulation was so transparent, it almost became funny. Almost. "I'm not changing my wedding date," I repeated. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient, but this date is important to Ryan and me. You've had my save the dates for months. This shouldn't be a surprise. My mother's expression shifted from manipulative to cold. It's just a date, Vanessa. You can have your wedding anytime. Your sister has special circumstances. Created circumstances, I corrected before I could stop myself. Circumstances that conveniently appeared after I planned my entire wedding. Bethany's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you suggesting I got pregnant on purpose to steal your wedding date? That's delusional even for you. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Please be reasonable about this wedding situation. Your mother explains everything. Your sister needs our support now. Of course he'd been briefed but wouldn't show up in person. He'd always dispatched my mother to deliver difficult messages while he maintained plausible deniability. Bethany stood, adjusting her blouse with exaggerated care. My wedding needs to be perfect. Yours is just about the marriage anyway, right? You're always saying how you don't care about the fancy details. Another manipulation. I'd never said any such thing, but she was rewriting history to serve her narrative. A familiar tactic. My mother rose too, her expression suggesting the matter was settled. Think about it overnight, but we'll need to contact the venue tomorrow to make the switch. I'm sure they'll be understanding given the circumstances. Something in me finally broke. The lifetime of acquiescence, of swallowing my needs to keep peace, of being the reasonable one while Bethany took whatever she wanted. I need you both to leave, I said quietly. My mother blinked in surprise. Excuse me? Leave my home now. I'm not changing my wedding date. I'm not giving up my venue, and I'm not having this conversation anymore. My mother's face reddened. I think you're being selfish. Maybe this is a sign you're not ready for marriage if you can't put family first. That final manipulation, questioning my readiness for marriage because I wouldn't surrender to their demands, was the breaking point. I walked to the door and held it open. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Bethany. I'll let you know my decision tomorrow. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, shaking with adrenaline and suppressed rage. I called Mackenzie, who arrived 20 minutes later with emergency ice cream and righteous anger on my behalf. Ryan returned shortly after, his relaxed post-golf expression instantly transforming to concern when he saw my face. I told them everything, the words tumbling out between sobs of frustration. They want us to cancel our wedding so Bethany can have our date. They actually expect me to call all our guests and say, "Sorry, my sister needs the spotlight more than I do." Ryan's expression darkened in a way I'd never seen. That's not happening. Not after everything we've invested, financially and emotionally. Mackenzie nodded fiercely. This is next-level manipulation, Van. If you give in on this, they'll control every aspect of your life with Ryan. Every holiday, every decision about future kids, everything. My phone continued buzzing throughout the evening. My mother, my father, even two aunts who'd clearly been enlisted to talk sense into me. I silenced it after reading my father's disappointed email. I've never seen your mother this upset. After everything we've done for you, this feels like a slap in the face. Everything they'd done for me. As if providing basic necessities during childhood was an ongoing debt I could never repay, except through lifetime compliance. The next morning, I called the therapist I'd been seeing sporadically. Dr. Matthews had been helping me process my family dynamics for over a year, though I'd always resisted her gentle suggestions that my parents' behavior was problematic. What they're asking isn't normal or reasonable, she said during our emergency session. This pattern of sacrificing your needs for Bethany's wants has been consistent throughout your life. The question is, do you want to carry this pattern into your marriage with Ryan? Put that way, the answer was obvious. No, I don't. Then this might be the moment to break the cycle. Not just for this wedding, but for your future. That evening, Ryan and I had the most important conversation of our relationship, sitting on our tiny balcony with cups of tea growing cold between us. I can't keep doing this, I admitted. Every important moment in my life has been overshadowed by Bethany's needs and my parents' expectations. I don't want our marriage to start that way. Ryan took my hands. Then let's take back our wedding. Not just the date, the whole experience. Let's make it about us, not about managing your family's feelings. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of the joy that had been progressively extinguished. I deserve my happiness too, don't I? Ryan's answer was immediate and certain. Absolutely. And I'll be damned if I let anyone take that away from you. Even your family. The realization settled over me like a warm blanket. I deserved my happiness. I deserved my wedding day. And most importantly, I deserved to be more than a supporting character in my sister's story. It was time to rewrite the script. The next evening, we gathered our strongest supporters for what Ryan jokingly called our Wedding War Council. Mackenzie arrived with color-coded folders. Ryan's parents brought dinner and unwavering support. His brother Michael came armed with solutions for every logistical challenge we might face. First, we need to document everything, Mackenzie said, ever the organized one. Van, let's list every instance where your family has tried to undermine your wedding or prioritize Bethany's hypothetical one. The resulting timeline was illuminating and disturbing. Seeing the pattern laid out chronologically made the escalating manipulation impossible to dismiss as isolated incidents or misunderstandings. Next decision, Ryan said firmly. Who stays on the guest list? This was the hardest part. After tear-filled deliberation, I made the painful choice. My immediate family would be uninvited. Extended relatives who had shown genuine support could still attend if they respected our boundaries. They'll make a scene, I worried. They'll show up anyway and try to take over. Michael, who worked in corporate security, shook his head. Not if we do this right. We'll enhance security at the venue, provide photos of unauthorized individuals, and ensure the staff knows the situation. Ryan's mother squeezed my hand. Sweetheart, this is about protecting your joy, not punishing them. Sometimes the kindest thing for everyone is a firm boundary. With our strategy established, I drafted the hardest email of my life. Mackenzie and Ryan helped me revise until the message was clear but not cruel. Dear Mom, Dad, and Bethany. After careful consideration, I've decided our wedding will proceed as planned on June 12th at Willow Creek Gardens. However, given recent events, we no longer feel comfortable including you in our celebration. Your behavior has made it clear that you cannot prioritize our happiness on our day. This isn't a negotiation or an invitation for discussion. We're informing you that you are no longer welcome at our wedding. Security will be informed, and attempts to attend will be addressed accordingly. I hope in time we can rebuild our relationship on healthier terms, but that process cannot begin until our boundaries are respected. Vanessa. I sent it before I could lose courage, then turned off my phone. For the evening, when I checked messages the next morning, the explosion had occurred as expected. 17 missed calls from my mother, voice messages escalating from tearful, "I can't believe you're doing this to us," to threatening, "You'll regret this decision for the rest of your life." Multiple texts from my father ranging from disappointed, "This isn't how we raised you," to angry, "After everything we've sacrificed." Bethany had taken a different approach, posting a vague but pointed social media update. Heartbroken by family betrayal during our special time, true colors always show when blessings arrive. Praying for healing. I blocked their numbers and social media accounts, feeling both terrible and relieved as I did so. Ryan arranged for our mail to be held at the post office to prevent any delivered guilt trips. The extended family response was divided. My father's brother left a blistering voicemail about family loyalty, while his wife separately sent a supportive text. "Standing your ground takes courage. Proud of you." Several cousins messaged variations of, "I don't want to get involved," which I respected. The most surprising support came from my father's sister, Aunt Caroline, who'd always been somewhat distant. Her email arrived 3 days after our announcement. "Vanessa, I recognized the pattern immediately because my sister-in-law, your grandmother, did the same to me with your father's enabling. I've watched history repeat itself with you and Bethany. Breaking the cycle takes tremendous courage. I'm here if you need someone who understands exactly what you're facing. P.S. I'd still love to attend your wedding if the invitation stands. Her message brought tears of validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Someone else in the family saw the dynamic clearly. With the hardest decision made, we redirected our energy toward creating the wedding we truly wanted. I met with our venue coordinator, who was professionally discreet but clearly understood the situation. We'll add professional security that day, she assured me. And I'll personally ensure that only guests on your final list are admitted. We revised our seating chart, creating a more intimate arrangement now that 23 family members were no longer attending. We added personalized elements that my mother had previously vetoed as too non-traditional, a memory table honoring Ryan's late grandparents, readings from our favorite books rather than conventional religious texts, a unity ceremony involving our closest friends. As we made these changes, I began intensive therapy to process the complex grief of setting boundaries with my family. Dr. Matthews helped me navigate the painful emotions, guilt, doubt, sadness, and the unexpected liberation that came with standing my ground. You're mourning the family relationship you deserved but never had, she explained. That grief is valid, but you're also building something healthier for your future. Hold both truths simultaneously. We practiced responses for the inevitable, confrontations, preparing for every scenario from tearful apologies, unlikely, to public accusations, probable. Ryan attended some sessions, learning how to support me without taking control of my healing process. With each day that passed, my confidence grew. Friends commented on the change in my demeanor. I stood straighter, spoke more assertively, laughed more freely. The wedding details that had become burdensome under my family's scrutiny became joyful again as we reshaped them to truly reflect our relationship. A week before the wedding, the final manipulation attempts began. My mother left a tearful message with Ryan's mother, claiming I was mentally unwell and needed family intervention. My father called Ryan's father, suggesting this was all a terrible misunderstanding that could be resolved if Ryan would talk. Some sense into Vanessa. Most disturbing were the messages from various relatives warning us that my mother and Bethany were discussing showing up anyway to force a reconciliation, believing I would never cause a scene on my wedding day. They didn't understand how much I had changed. The Vanessa who would sacrifice her happiness to avoid conflict was gone. In her place stood a woman who recognized her worth and was prepared to protect her joy, even from those who should have been its greatest champions. The night before our wedding, as we finalized security arrangements and confirmed contingency plans, Ryan pulled me close. "Are you okay with all this? We can still elope if this is too much pressure." I shook my head, suddenly certain. I've spent my life accommodating their feelings. Tomorrow is about ours. I want to stand in front of the people who genuinely support us and make these promises. I won't let them take that away. He kissed my forehead. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Wedding mornings are supposed to be chaotic in the best way. Champagne with bridesmaids, last-minute makeup adjustments, nervous laughter. Mine began with a security alert. "Your mother and sister are at the main entrance," Michael reported. Phone pressed to his ear as he stood in the bridal preparation room at Willow Creek. Security is redirecting them to the management office away from guest areas. My stomach dropped despite all our preparation. "What are they saying?" "The usual. Family emergency, misunderstanding, need to speak with you immediately. The venue manager is handling it professionally. Ryan's dad is there as backup." Mackenzie squeezed my hand as anxiety threatened to overtake me. "Remember our plan," she whispered. "This is your day. They don't get to hijack it." For a moment, doubt clouded my resolve. These were my parents, my sister. Was I making a terrible mistake? Would I regret this boundary forever? I closed my eyes, centering myself with the techniques Dr. Matthews had taught me. When I opened them, I saw my reflection in the antique mirror. Hair elegantly styled, makeup enhancing rather than masking, eyes clear and determined. But more importantly, I was surrounded by women who truly wanted my happiness. Mackenzie, Ryan's mother Susan, my Aunt Caroline, and friends who had supported me through years of joy and pain. "I'm ready," I said, and meant it. Michael returned. 15 minutes later, grinning. "All clear." They left when the manager explained trespassing consequences. "Dad says the ceremony area is secure and guests are being seated." The original plan had been for my father to walk me down the aisle. In his absence, I made a decision that felt perfectly right. I would walk alone. Not because I don't have anyone. I explained to Mackenzie when she offered to escort me. But because I want to symbolically choose this path myself. As the string quartet began playing our carefully selected processional, I stood at the garden entrance, momentarily unseen by our seated guests. The path before me was lined with soft blush roses and twinkling lights. At the end stood Ryan, handsome in his tailored suit, eyes searching for his first glimpse of me. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward alone. The traditional wedding march became a walk of independence, each step representing my choice to break generational patterns and build something healthier. When I reached Ryan, his eyes shining with pride and love, I felt a profound sense of rightness that eclipsed any remaining doubt. Where my father would have given me away, a tradition I'd kept to please my family, Mackenzie instead gave a brief blessing of friends. We who have witnessed Vanessa and Ryan's journey offer our wholehearted support for this union. We commit to standing beside them, celebrating their joy, supporting them through challenges, and respecting the boundaries they establish to protect their love. Her words, so different from the traditional formula, brought tears to my eyes and approving nods from our guests. Our vows, written privately and shared publicly for the first time, addressed our commitment to creating a healthy partnership built on mutual respect, a subtle but meaningful contrast to the relationship patterns I'd grown up observing. "I promise to see you, hear you, and value your needs as equal to my own," I told Ryan, my voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. For our unity ceremony, we'd chosen something unconventional, a wooden box containing a bottle of wine and sealed letters to each other. Friends from different chapters of our lives added symbolic items representing our journey together. A running bib from the charity race where we met, a coffee sleeve from our first date, a key symbolizing our first apartment. "This represents our chosen family," the officiant explained. "The foundation of support you've built together, separate from the circumstances of your birth." The reception that followed felt lighter than I could have imagined. Without the weight of family tension, we moved through the celebration without walking on eggshells, laughing genuinely, dancing freely. Ryan's brother gave a heartfelt toast that acknowledged the difficult journey without dwelling on specifics. Some people are present in our lives because of blood, while others are present by choice. Today we celebrate those who choose to be here, supporting this marriage with sincere hearts. Several guests later commented it was the most joyful wedding they'd attended, unaware of the drama that had preceded it. The photographer captured genuine smiles, unforced interactions, and moments of authentic happiness that would have been impossible under my family's critical gaze. The social media aftermath began the following morning as we departed for our honeymoon. Though I'd blocked my immediate family, mutual connections ensured I heard about their responses. My mother had commented on a relative's congratulatory post. "Some celebrations are bittersweet when manipulated by outside influences. Praying for healing." Bethany, never one to be overshadowed, announced her exact wedding date, conveniently scheduled 3 weeks after ours at a different, but similarly elegant venue. Her post emphasized her genuine family values and commitment to including loved ones despite differences. The contrast between their passive-aggressive jabs and the genuine celebration surrounding our wedding couldn't have been clearer. Several relatives who had witnessed both the wedding and my family's behavior privately messaged support, some admitting they'd seen the unhealthy dynamics for years but hadn't known how to address them. Our 2-week honeymoon in Costa Rica became a sanctuary. We agreed to a digital detox from family drama, focusing instead on building the foundation of our marriage. Between rainforest hikes and beachside conversations, we processed the emotional complexity of the wedding and established how we would handle family interactions moving forward. "We're a team now," Ryan reminded me as we watched the sunset from our private veranda. "Any decisions about your family are our decisions. You're not facing this alone anymore." When we returned home, the shift in my life extended beyond family boundaries. Colleagues commented on my new confidence in meetings. Friends noted I expressed opinions more readily instead of deferring to others. Ryan's family created new traditions that incorporated me fully, without the competitive undercurrent I'd grown accustomed to with Bethany. Most tellingly, several extended family members declined Bethany's wedding invitation, privately telling me they'd recognized the manipulation, tactics, and couldn't in good conscience participate. "Your courage opened my eyes," my cousin Jennifer admitted over coffee. "I always felt something was off but couldn't name it. Seeing you draw that line helped me understand what healthy boundaries look like." As the months passed, I discovered that breaking generational patterns wasn't just possible, it was necessary for genuine happiness. And though the road was harder than I'd imagined, I never once regretted reclaiming my wedding day. 1 year later, Ryan and I celebrated our first anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, reflecting on how much had changed. Our marriage had grown stronger through honest communication and unified boundaries. The limited, carefully managed contact we maintained with my family remained challenging, but was no longer all-consuming. News filtered through the family grapevine about Bethany's wedding, apparently a lavish but tension-filled affair where my mother micromanaged every detail and Cameron's family felt sidelined. Their marriage was showing strain just months in, with rumors of frequent arguments and Bethany's disappointment that married life wasn't providing the constant admiration she craved. My mother had never directly acknowledged the harm her behavior caused. Her periodic messages maintained the narrative that I had inexplicably cut off family who only wanted the best for me. My father occasionally sent neutral updates about his health or work, carefully avoiding any meaningful discussion about our relationship. My healing journey continued with regular therapy, where I gained critical insights about family roles and patterns. Dr. Matthews helped me understand that my position as the responsible, accommodating daughter had been established early and reinforced throughout my life, not because I was naturally that way, but because the family system required it for Bethany to maintain her role as the special, fragile one. "The most important thing to understand," she explained during a particularly enlightening session, "is that you didn't break the family. The family system was already broken. You simply stopped pretending it wasn't." That realization freed me from lingering guilt. I hadn't destroyed family harmony. I'd merely stopped participating in the carefully choreographed dysfunction that masqueraded as harmony. Building self-worth independent of family validation became my focus. I reconnected with passions I'd abandoned to accommodate others: painting, hiking, writing. I developed new traditions with Ryan and our chosen family, celebrating holidays and milestones in ways that felt authentic rather than obligatory. 6 months after our wedding, an unexpected development occurred. My father requested a private lunch. We met at a neutral restaurant, both nervous and guarded. His attempt at apology was awkward but seemed genuine. "I didn't protect you," he admitted, staring into his coffee. "I took the path of least resistance with your mother, and you paid the price. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see it now." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. We began meeting monthly, carefully avoiding topics that would violate my boundaries. He never pushed for full family reunification, seeming to understand that my relationship with my mother and sister would require much more significant changes on their part. Several relatives began building separate relationships with me, independent of larger family gatherings. My Aunt Caroline became a surrogate mother figure, sharing wisdom from her own experience with similar family dynamics. Two cousins made efforts to know Ryan and me as a couple, inviting us to smaller gatherings where we felt comfortable and respected. The most surprising olive branch came that Christmas, a carefully worded card from my mother suggesting she was ready to move forward. Reading between the lines revealed the familiar strings attached. Her willingness to reconcile depended on my willingness to forget rather than address the past. I responded with kindness but firmness, explaining that moving forward required acknowledging what happened. Her lack of response confirmed she wasn't truly ready for an authentic relationship, a disappointing but important confirmation that my boundaries remained necessary. In February, I attended my first family gathering since the ICI wedding, a small birthday celebration for my grandmother. My mother maintained cool civility, my father tried too hard to facilitate smooth interactions, and Bethany oscillated between ignoring me and making pointed references to her struggling marriage. Throughout the tense afternoon, I remained calm and centered, neither seeking approval nor engaging in old patterns. When my mother made a passive-aggressive comment about people who abandon family, I simply replied, "I'm sorry you see boundaries that way," and changed the subject. The confidence to respond authentically rather than placatingly represented enormous growth. These experiences taught me critical life lessons that transformed my approach to all relationships. First, manipulative patterns become visible once you're willing to see them. The techniques my family used, guilt, comparison, emotional blackmail, now appeared obvious rather than convincing. Second, boundaries aren't punishments, they're frameworks for healthy interaction. Setting limits wasn't about hurting my family, but about protecting my well-being and marriage. Third, identity exists beyond family roles. The responsible, accommodating daughter was just one facet of who I could be, not the definition of my worth. Most importantly, I learned that relationships based on mutual respect feel entirely different from those based on obligation and compliance. My connections with Ryan, his family, and friends who truly valued me showed me what genuine support looked like, and made the contrast with my family of origin impossible to ignore. This newfound clarity brought professional success as well. The confidence to express ideas without constant self-doubt led to a promotion at work. My willingness to establish boundaries with difficult colleagues improved workplace relationships. Even my creative pursuits flourished when freed from the need for external validation. As Ryan and I began discussing our future, including the possibility of starting a family, I felt deeply committed to breaking the generational patterns I'd experienced. Any children we might have would grow up with parents who validated their feelings, respected their autonomy, and modeled healthy relationships. The journey hasn't been perfect. I still occasionally slip into people-pleasing habits, still sometimes hear my mother's critical voice in my head. But now I recognize these moments for what they are, echoes of old patterns, not directives I must follow. The peace I've found isn't based on perfect family reconciliation, but on acceptance that relationships can be limited yet civil, distant yet respectful. I no longer need my mother's approval to validate my choices, my sister's admiration to feel worthy, or my father's protection to feel secure. Your worth isn't determined by how much you're willing to sacrifice for others' comfort. Your boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary frameworks for genuine relationships. And sometimes, the family you build through choice proves stronger than the one you were born into. I still hold hope that someday my family will recognize the unhealthy patterns that led to our estrangement. But my happiness no longer depends on that recognition. I've rebuilt my life on healthier ground, surrounded by people who love me as I am, not for what I can give or endure. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What helped you maintain those boundaries despite the guilt and pressure? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do, for ourselves and others, is to break cycles that harm rather than heal. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage on your own journey toward healthy relationships.